Now, for those that aren't as familiar with the National Defense Strategy, I think it heralded a really substantial change in our overall approach to security policy. Recall, in September 11th, 2001, we had, of course, the terrible attacks in New York and Washington, D.C., and we had spent really about 2 decades very focused on counterterrorism for obvious reasons. And we had also previously talked about the challenge from perhaps there being 2 major regional contingencies that the military, the U.S. military, would need to respond to. But we hadn't really set forward a vision that I think matched the circumstances of today that still persists, but certainly over 2 years ago. And the main thrust of the National Defense Strategy is that great power competition has returned. That is to say, the countries with the largest, most capable militaries, with the largest influence in the world, beginning to have other designs, and the potential, the specter of conflict, armed conflict, returning with countries like Russia, with China. And we saw Russia trying to dominate their neighbors, for example, invading parts of Ukraine and occupying Crimea, using violence in places like the UK to assassinate political opponents of President Putin. Saw them challenging the international order. And so the National Defense Strategy said, in many ways, Russia is a near-term, more lethal threat, but it clearly said China is the longer-term challenge and the biggest challenge that we face, because China, with the United States and China, are the world's 2 largest economies. China with over 1 billion people, very large military. We've seen them, for example, in recent years, just expanding their official military spending, and the unofficial numbers are higher, obviously, by 850% in recent years over the previous level, about the last 10 years. That is a very substantial increase. We see China also beginning to push out in its environs in the South China Sea, claiming large territories, challenging the international order, challenging the international rules-based system, whether that be for free trade, free movement of people, ideas, basic human rights of things like free speech, free association. So the National Defense Strategy very clearly said those are the biggest challenges, and international terrorism is not the greatest threat to our way of life. It is a substantial threat, but not the largest threat. And then it mentioned that North Korea and Iran are in the next tier. North Korea with a very substantial nuclear program, missile program that continues to expand, that continues to grow its capabilities, a very large forward-deployed military, and a regime with a history of showing hostility to its neighbors and using violence. And then, of course, its abysmal human rights record at home. In Iran, the NDS talked about the fact that Iran has tried to pursue an expansionist policy, really trying to have an arc of malign influence stretching from Yemen all the way to the Mediterranean, through Iraq, through Syria, through Lebanon, challenging Israel through support for Hamas, doing steps in places like Yemen to support the Houthi militants who are attacking Saudi Arabia and the UAE and others. So that's the environment we were in, and Iran with a very large missile program that continues to expand, a nuclear program that remains of a great concern to us, and then its long-standing support for terrorism and other activities. So in that environment, the Missile Defense Review fit within it. And one of the things that I would say in that National Defense Strategy, we did a review that the Congress mandated at the 1-year point, and I think it came out very good. But I think today, it's even more clear to me that that has charted the right guidepost for the nation and stood up very well to the test of time. The coronavirus pandemic really illustrates that. At the time that the National Defense Strategy was put forward, there were some people who questioned, does it put too much emphasis on China, or perhaps that is a longer-term threat? And I don't think anyone would say that today, having observed the behavior of the Chinese Communist Party and the government that they lead in China in the way they've responded to the coronavirus pandemic.